Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network here at Center Ice. I am Nick, and usually joined with me is Brit, but unfortunately, she is not going to be with us this week. She had a passing in the family and is mourning with her family at this time. So, thoughts and prayers go out to Brit for this week, and hopefully, everything is okay in that household. Okay, so that being said, it'll be just me. I know I'm the uglier of the two hosts on this show, but I'll do my best to look as good as I can. Before we get started, don't forget everyone to like and subscribe. Follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can do so on the various social media platforms of your choosing. And if you want to follow us, you can do so at the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook and at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Okay, that being said, I must first issue an apology. It's been pretty up and down with the social media updates as far as game day scores and whatnot. I apologize. Just been a little busy in the work life, so I wasn't able to get those out. But I'll do a better job next week. So that being said, we'll just kind of jump right into it as far as games that we've had. And then kind of talk about from there, like the central division, what it looks like, why the Avalanche are in the position they are, and we'll get to much more coming up later in the episode. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the games that occurred last week. So we talked about 4 games, of which they went 2-1-1, which, based off of who they played, and I'll tell you in a second, Sabres, Canadiens, Panthers, or excuse me, we talked about the Sabres, I apologize. Canadiens, Avalanche, Blackhawks, and Wild. So this one, oh no, it was Sabres as well. So 5. I apologize, man. So let's see, you've gone 2-3 wins, an overtime or shootout loss, I should say, and then just a regulation loss. So 3-1-1. That's good. Obviously, we take that considering the people that you played. The odd thing though about this last week that happened was who the wins and the losses were to. It didn't go any way I thought it was going to be. However, we'll get to all those, but I'm not really surprised on a couple of these games, and I'll tell you why. So first, let's talk about the Buffalo Sabres and the Colorado Avalanche, the 6-5 overtime winner, in which the Avalanche mounted a strong and fantastic comeback against the Sabres. I mean, this game was one where we said that you should win it, shouldn't be difficult, tune up, whatever it is that we said last week. And it was really anything but. I mean, the Sabres came out to a 3-0 lead, going about halfway into the second period. So halfway through the game, you haven't scored a goal. Buffalo has already scored 3. And things just the Avs couldn't put stuff together in the first half of that game. Finally, Cale Makar gets a goal to at least put it to a 2-goal deficit. Now, keep that in mind, 2-goal deficit, because that becomes the theme of the game all the way until literally the last 6 seconds of the game. It was incredible. So, Ross Colton then opens the third period with a goal, to which the Sabres return a goal in kind, back to a 2-goal lead. Mikko Rantanen scores a power play goal. Jason Zucker with the Buffalo Sabres scores to make it a 2-goal lead. And that last goal was with just under 4 minutes left in the game. So Colorado, with that much time, decides to pull the goalie early to try and achieve getting 2 goals back with 6 players. Cale Makar is able to score with 2.5 minutes left. Now you're down 1, and we pull the goalie again to see if we can get just that 1 goal left. And with, I think it was either 8 or 6 seconds left, our dearly beloved Jonathan Drouin finds himself just left of the slot, open for a for a Nathan McKinnon pass, and his shot goes in. Tie game, bell goes off. We're headed to overtime. That in and of itself was amazing. Okay, for those of you who watched that game, this is easily one of the greatest comebacks in recent history. Obviously, we know the one against the Canucks, the one against the Penguins, the one against the Sabres earlier this year, even 4 goals down, and you worked your way throughout the last 2 periods to get that back. But this one, where you're down 2 with 3 minutes left, and you tie that game, that's impressive. That's really impressive. So we go to overtime, and it doesn't take all but 48 seconds for this overtime to be finished and the Avalanche celebrating. I want to give a shout out to Devon Toews, who did score the overtime winning goal, but the entire effort on that series was his. Against when the Sabres got control of the puck, they brought it into their offensive zone, and Devon Toews stuck to Tage Thompson like glue, pinned him against the boards, and was able to poke the puck out, swivel move around a swinging stick of Tage Thompson, and he's off to the races on his own breakaway. Well, he created it, he started it, and he finished it. I couldn't believe it. I had to run quickly to close the door so I could scream. It was that impressive. Like that was an emotional roller coaster. One that we thought for the first half we were out of. It's just not our night. And then they turn it around in the second half, score with 6 seconds to tie it, and Devon Toews, well done for him. We'll talk about him in our next segment as well. But he had a night. In fact, he's had a few good nights in this series. So moving on, then you have a kind of reverse game. The highs of the highs, obviously, you always come with the low of the lows. The Canadiens come into town, and you lose this game in a shootout. This one was bizarre to me because 22 shots on goal, or 23 shots on goal, that doesn't seem like Avalanche. It was... They weren't really opportunistic. The game was very slow. It was very night and day compared to the comeback that they had just a couple nights before that. And I think it was maybe like you were riding a high and had that high hangover, is how I would assume that this would be. Because just looking at everything, I mean, I think it was 22 or 23 shots as well for the Canadiens. And the Canadiens, they're still in this rebuild, retool phase, but they are still a hard-hitting team, like we talked about last week. So you had to kind of up the ante as far as physicality goes, which I honestly think the Avalanche did, but they only focused so much of that effort into then turning that into an offense. Overall, I mean, we get the first goal, right? And so it was fine, but the rest of the game wasn't there. As far as production, chances, creations, turnovers were high, face-offs were not good. Just everything was pretty lackluster. And then obviously just a little over halfway through the third period, Cole Caulfield scores the goal and you head to overtime. Nothing happens there. In fact, nothing happened really for the majority of the game. And it's just kind of a unfortunate turn of events in the shootout, and you lose, right? So this was one where it's you do walk away with a point. Excellent. You know, I would always take overtime, even if you do lose. You at least walk away with something. But it was one where it's like there could have been more effort put in. There could have been some changes. There were some missed calls in that game, but overall, you have to play the game as how it's presented and how it's created, and they didn't take advantage of it. So not fun as far as the contrast of winning and losing, but it wasn't the worst loss of this 5-game recap. However, they did turn it around in the very next game when the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers, came into town, and they win this game 3-1. This one had a very playoff-esque feel. Bobrovsky was playing fantastic. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was actually 2-1 and then Rantanen with like 100 and almost 200-foot empty net goal, which was really impressive. Ends up putting that one away. But this one had very playoff atmosphere like vibes in that game. It was awesome. And, Devon Toews gets 2 goals. He could have had a hat trick. But there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of the same physicality of a playoff game, but with none of the monstrosity, the fighting that comes with it. It was just hard-nosed, good classic hockey game. The big thing I liked from that, though, was Mackenzie Blackwood's play in this game. Bobrovsky did great too, but Mackenzie Blackwood in this game did phenomenal, saving 26 of 27, and his play has been really good over the last few games that he's been doing, including this one here against Minnesota. For those of you tuning in, we're just after the Wild game. His play's been really good. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't had more shutouts because he's been awesome, and Wedgwood, when he pitches in, he's just as good. So I've been really impressed with the goaltending and how the team has transformed when it comes to this goaltending play. And we'll talk about that also in the next segment. But you skate away with a 3-1 win. You're back in the win column. Vibes are high. Then you go on this little road trip, which you have one more game left, but you did play 2 so far. You go to Chicago, the game where statistically you should be blowing out the Blackhawks like crazy, just out of the water. And half the team, I guess, forgot to board the plane to get to Chicago because that was not even the Avalanche out there. There's one thing when it's the Avs and they're not doing an effort, like that Canadiens game where they just like, come on, you could do more. They didn't even do anything, with the exception of, I will say, Juuso Parssinen, our newbie, who did pot a really nice goal. It was really beautiful. But the rest of the time, Mrazek apparently decides to become a Vezina finalist. And the rest of the Chicago Blackhawks decide to play as if this is Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. I don't know. It was the trap game that I didn't think needed to be, and Brit and I even talked about this last week, was we thought statistically this should again be a tune-up game for those coming back. Just a quick fix because you're going to have a pretty difficult schedule afterward. But for some reason now, I think this is 3, maybe 4 years in a row where you have not won in Chicago for some reason or another, whether you're still on a great streak, you're in the lowest of lows in a rut like last year. We can't do it. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but we can't do it. Very frustrating, very disappointing. But again, you have to turn those types of games around, which luckily the Avalanche are doing. Because we'll move on from that game now, because again, that was just barf, right? You now go to today, which the Avalanche did just finish up a game in Minnesota, and what a turnaround that was. The Avalanche defeated the Minnesota Wild with a final score of 6-1. Wow. First of all, I mean, this game showed me a lot of things that I was hoping that we would see more of. Like I said, Parker Kelly last week on my New Year's resolutions. And I think to the depths of Kiviranta I talked about. I think I might have mentioned Josh Manson. But this one was one where the depth came into play. Logan O'Connor, Ross Colton, Parker Kelly all having goals. Josh Manson having 2 assists. This one was good all the way around. And Mackenzie Blackwood, man, if it wasn't for just one goal where he just kind of didn't follow the puck very well, which again, typically he does, that's a shutout. It's a 6-0 shutout. But we'll take a win, and we'll take a dominant win for that matter. This game was good. This game is the Avalanche that I know can play this type of game. And especially when you're playing a game against the Wild, it's a 4-point swing, folks. Remember, it's 2 points for you, but more importantly, let's get that focus back in there. 2 points for you, but more importantly, 2 points that don't go to your Central Division rival. And so that's huge. That's massive when it comes to this chase that you're doing in the standings. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about that. We'll move into our next segment here. We'll talk about the standings. So currently, as it sits, the Avalanche are in the first, I believe, first wild card spot. They were in the second going into the game, but I think they have. Oh no, they were in the first wild card spot, period, and they retained that wild card spot still. So what is going on, and how come, even though they're winning 2, losing 1, or winning 3, losing 1, how come they're not progressing in such a way that they should be in second, even could even be first place based off of how they've been playing as of recently? Well, it's because this Central Division is also doing so well right now, and that's why, especially with this win against Minnesota, or adversely the loss against Chicago, are so important, because those two, again, I just talked 2 division rivals. You win one, you lost one. That cancels out, right? Despite Chicago being way at the bottom, Minnesota being at the top, you lost to one of them. And so that win against Minnesota doesn't do anything for your standings in your division. This is where these runs need to occur as far as winning in your division, because every game obviously is important. You need to win because that's more points in your bank. But the division ones especially are the ones that they're must wins, no matter who it is. I don't care if it's St. Louis or Utah or Winnipeg. These are wins that you have to get back, because it is now halfway through the season, which is unfortunate to say because it's been a pretty fun season. All seasons are fun, but this one has been especially exciting because of the goalie trades and new acquisitions and what have you. So it's coming to be this crunch time, and you need to start getting serious about your team's identity. Which that's been the biggest thing, is because for the first half of the season, obviously, give or take a couple weeks, you didn't really have one. The locker room was dull because of goaltending issues. You traded both of those away, got 2 new guys, and that sprung back to life. The only things now that you really need to tune up are those dud games where you just don't show up. Case in point, Chicago. Case in point, Montreal. Games like those where statistically you should be winning. On ice, you should be winning. In every facet of the game, you should be winning. And you don't. Whether you are outmatched, meaning out-hustled, you still did everything you could. There are those games. But there's a difference between that, doing your best, right? And it just puck luck, the hockey gods are mad with you, whatever it is. And then there's not trying. You let your foot off the gas. You let the other team come back into the game. We've seen it a couple of times. For example, when we had the lead against Nashville last season, we had a 2-goal lead, and that went away in 1 minute, and you lose in regulation, right? So it's those types of games you have to give up. And like Fernando here commented, it's avoiding those trap games. Those games you should be winning. Those are the ones that you need to especially look out for. So thank you, Fernando, for that comment. I appreciate that. So in the Central Division, this is the hardest part, because everywhere else, you're seeing that cream rise to the top. You're seeing the good teams start to get into their respective positions. The Central Division, on the other hand, yes, you have your good and your bad, but the problem is there are still plenty more good that can go higher, that there's no room. It's too crowded. Everyone's winning in the Central Division. When it comes to those interdivision games, that 4-point swing is massive, right? Because that's one where you get immediately, you get 2 points up on the person you're trying to chase. In our case, it's Minnesota, Dallas, and Winnipeg, which you are tied in points with Winnipeg or with Dallas as far as getting that third position, but they do hold tiebreaker over you. So I think that's going to be the big key when it comes to these next games, especially next week, as you do have one of the ones you're chasing, is you have to give it your all. You have to play up to your competition, because next week's schedule is not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun, but you have to give your entire effort in order to get these points, because clearly, because you're winning and you are winning, the other teams, the three teams I'm talking about, obviously Dallas, Minnesota, and Winnipeg, they're also giving as equal of effort. So you need to embarrass them like you did tonight in tonight's game and flip that switch. And you need to hope that other teams around the league can pull those types of upsets, can kind of become trap games for those three teams. I'm not saying that's what you have to solely rely on, because obviously you have to do and pick up your end of the bargain. But you also have to kind of start really rooting for the other teams that are playing our division, so that, they can kind of start retracting, coming back down to earth, and we can hopefully leapfrog them. So that's the beauty of it, though. Hockey is in any given night, the worst team can easily go out and beat the best team. And it's beautiful, but it sucks when it happens to you. I'll tell you that much. So that being said, I also wanted to talk about a couple of people from this week that I think deserve some recognition. The first one being Devon Taves. 4 goals in 4 games, almost a hat trick, overtime winner, plenty of assists, great vision. I hope and I think he's back, like officially, because obviously this first half of the season, not very good, with a couple of goals and a couple of assists. He looked like almost a shell of himself, despite signing that large contract extension. He just didn't look like he was playing all that good, and I was worried about, the potential of him getting bumped down to the second pairing, and things like that. So the fact that he had a week of this, not just a good game, he had a good week, and is continuing to have a good week now, despite not being on the scoreboard as much. He's definitely playing a lot looser. He's taking those shots from the blue line that we've seen him do time and time again. It looks like he's falling back into his typical self, which is good. That's what we want. So big shout out to Devon Taves this week. He did a really good job, and you gotta recognize the effort and the production that's been rewarding him because of his effort. The other person I want to give a shout out to is Mackenzie Blackwood. Obviously, with that really dangerous stunt that happened, I should say, with the Buffalo game, very scary. But it looks like Wedgwood's going to be okay from what I've seen. Blackwood came in and played Stonewall in that game, and he's been playing Stonewall ever since, basically, with the exception of the game. Or no, that was Trent Miner for Chicago, so I apologize. But even so, Blackwood's been doing great for this team. Obviously, I'd love to get your guys' feedback in the comments. Let me know how you think Blackwood and Wedgwood are doing. But as far as Blackwood, I'm giving him a recognition as well, because the team is different now that we have these two in net. Now that they have actual Avalanche themed Facebooks or Avalanche themed face masks. I'm sorry, Facebook. There was a comment that came in on Facebook. The team's been different. I don't know how to describe it per se, but there has been indication that there was something going on in the locker room, because Nathan MacKinnon had kind of indicated that based off of ways he's responded about goaltending. So it can only be assumed that, Georgiev and to that extent Jussi Sananen just weren't there. They were mentally gone or something. They checked out, which is too bad, because obviously, how Brit and I were saying, like, we were big Georgiev kind of defenders for the longest time. And it's hard to see Georgiev still struggling-ish in San Jose. But again, now that there's no pressure on him, hopefully he finds a good rhythm and becomes a good goaltender for him. But just the way this team has responded to those trades has been nothing short of impressive. And he is kind of worth the trade, worth every penny. And I think it's actually, there's a comment that came in here, Fernando again, that says, you don't feel nervous at all anymore. And I would say that's absolutely right. You don't care who's in net, whether it's Wedgwood or Blackwood. You're like, great, you got solid goaltending. You're not worried about, oh boy, what is he going to do? And obviously still small sample size ish, but there's been no failure. There's obviously the duds that every goaltender has. We haven't won every game, obviously, but you don't have those like, oh great, is he going to fall into the abyss? Is he going to be in this rut? It's just bad game. That's it. That's the extent of the thought now, which is very comforting in a lot of senses. And now that we have Blackwood long term, hopefully we get Wedgwood even signed. I know he's got another year, but maybe even get him. So we have just a solid tandem for the next 3 to 4 years. That'd be impressive. That'd be very impressive. So I got to give my flowers to Blackwood. He's been playing very, very well this last week. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and kind of switch gears here into the upcoming games. So we know that we do have one. Whoops, let's see here. We have, let me see which ones I want to talk about. We will go, I don't want to do 2 games because that is not enough. So I'll do the next 3, despite the fact that we'll probably have another episode before that one. So you have the Winnipeg Jets to finish up your road trip that you have currently going on. And like I said, this is my key to the game for this upcoming Winnipeg Jets game. You need to realize, excuse me, there's an eyelash in my eye. You need to realize this is that exact game that I'm talking about. It's a division rival. You are chasing them in the standings. This is huge when it comes to leapfrogging people and, hoping things fall in your favor. You control part of that destiny right here in this game. Hellebuck has been playing really well. The whole Winnipeg Jets have been playing really well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the standings where they are. So that's the key to the game, is to understand the significance of this particular division rivalry game, because it means you now have leg room, leeway, tie-breaking abilities, whatever you want to give yourself credit for. If you win, that's what's on the line in this type of game. So the way to do that, I think, is to play exactly how you played against Minnesota tonight, right? You took away their scoring abilities. Your defense was on point. Goaltending obviously was a big factor of it. You didn't let up the gas once, right? In fact, Logan O'Connor, with a minute left in the game was already in hand. He still had a breakaway opportunity that he tried to just pot instead of going and wasting time and trying to, which he could have done, and it would have been just a fine strategy. But he still went and tried to put that puck in the net. That's the mentality you have to have for this particular game as you are chasing them in the standings. So that's my key to the game for Winnipeg. Next game, this one's going to be fun. A little husband-wife rivalry here. The New York Rangers are going to be here. Rewinding just a second, that Avalanche Jets games says it's 5 p.m. Mountain Time puck drop, and it'll be nationally broadcast on NHL Network. The Rangers are going to be there Tuesday on the 14th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time puck drop. This one is going to be weird, as they typically have been. Not because Georgiev is no longer there and it was his former team and yada, yada, yada. Those always did make for good games. The Rangers right now are in a weird spot where people think they're not making the playoffs. Keep in mind, they went to the conference finals last year. They were a great, great team last year. A lot of those players returned. Shesterkin signed this massive extension with a big payout. But for some reason, the wins just are not coming to the Rangers. And it doesn't seem like it's for lack of trying. And believe you me, I've seen my fair share of Rangers games this year, as my wife is a Rangers fan. It's weird, but they can squeak out the wins when they need to. In fact, they just won an overtime game against New Jersey today. I don't want this one to be one of those games where you get comfortable. I don't want this game to be something where you fall into, if assuming the Rangers are still not playing to what they should be, you fall into that play down category, right? Because that seems to be the Avalanche's Achilles heel, is when they are playing bad teams, they tend to play like them instead of just, solid win, move on. They have this knack where they decide to play down to these teams. And that's what I want to avoid in this case, because points, again, are important despite it not being a division, despite it not even being in the conference. It's 2 points in your pocket. The one big thing I'm going to say, and this is my key to the game, is that they are desperate for points. Now, keep in mind, despite the fact that the Rangers are not doing so well currently, now Shesterkin's back and maybe they've gotten their mojo. Hopefully they have. They're only 4 points out of a wild card spot. So it's not the end of the world, as a lot of people are saying there is. There's still definitely plenty of time for them to make a big old push. Case in point, the 2019 St. Louis Blues, dead last in the league, make a push in the second half of the season, make it into the playoffs. They squeak in, and it's kind of history from there. They go on to beat the Bruins in 7 and win the Stanley Cup. So it's not impossible for teams to make sudden turnarounds, is what I'm saying. And that's my key, is I don't want to be that spark that gets that ball rolling. I'd like for that to be the next game. So my wife can get what she wants and I can get what I want. That's the happy medium. So it's going to be an interesting game now that there is no Alexander Georgiev. There's no real tension, I should say, between the teams. There's nothing of significant importance of like, oh, it's the old backup versus the now starter, or whatever it is. It's just going to kind of be one of those camaraderie maybe games, but you have to get the job done. Whatever you did against Minnesota, like I talked about before, taking away shot opportunities, closing lanes, winning in scrums, defense, goaltending, offensive capabilities, they're always there. They always will be probably. But it's the little things. It's those other things on the back end that you need to button up in order to get away with the win. So should be fun. Depending on who wins, I may be sleeping on the couch, so wish me luck. But it should be a good game. I'm excited for it. Okay, then that'll bring us to the last one. And that is going to be the Avalanche hosting the Edmonton Oilers on Thursday the 16th, 7:30 p.m. puck drop. Now, like I said, we may do another episode, may cover it again, but I do want to talk about it in case we don't have one coming out in time, or there's one after the game, or we just aren't able to do one next week. This one's going to be fun. Obviously, it is, because it's the great Connor McDavid versus the great Nathan MacKinnon, the two recent Hart Trophy winners, the Conn Smythe winner coming into town. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's going to be on ESPN. Big deal, right? We know the pomp and circumstance. We know the whole blow up that this game is going to have. It's going to be fun, and I hope it is a fun game and a competitive game. However, I don't want it to be necessarily a close game. I want this one to be one of those 4-1 wins or something like that would be okay with me. 4-0. I'll be optimistic. 4-0. Blackwood gets the shutout. The key to the game on this one is to stop not Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, who right now has been doing really well as of late. In fact, let me see if I can pull up statistics from the league and just show you how just crazy he's been doing. So, keeping in mind, as far as skating leaders are concerned, in points, Nathan MacKinnon is winning by 5 points. He's got 66 on the season. Doing great. Right behind him, not right behind, but 61, 5 points behind him, is Leon Draisaitl. Not Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. Then you have Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs, our very own Mikko Rantanen, and then Connor McDavid with the same amount of points as Mikko. Okay, so that's not to discredit McDavid. He's having a bad season, whatever it is. It's just that Leon Draisaitl is having a good season. Okay, He also leads the league in goals right now, Leon Draisaitl, 31, compared to Mikko Rantanen's 24. Um, so he's a goal scorer. He's putting work in and he's getting rewarded for it. He's having a hell of a season. He is tied for second in plus minus points. And that's kind of all the really good statistic that you need to know about him, is that whenever he's on the ice, people are scoring. He himself is scoring. He's a points machine. That's my key to the game, is to stop him. You stop him, and to the extent as well, Connor McDavid, you stop them, you're in good position, right? Because goaltending for them has been okay. Obviously, that injury that occurred to Skinner, not fun to see, but he should be back. Hopefully he is. But either way, they have offensive firepower like none other. It's incredible to me that they've been together for that long, thinking that Draisaitl could be his own superstar without question if he was on another team, but he chooses to be with McDavid, and he's showing that now he doesn't need to be riding coattails. He has his own spotlight. In fact, he's always had his own spotlight. It just hasn't been emphasized the way it has been now. So if you stop Leon Draisaitl, if you are able to stop him and Connor McDavid and play a solid game of hockey, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be enough to stop their offense and that deadly power play that they have, you're in good shape. And I think they can do it. You saw what they did against the Panthers, where it was pretty hard nosed, but they were able to get it through. They had to fight and work for every goal, but it paid off. I feel like it might be something similar, but although I did say 4-1, 4-0 win would be great, I don't think it's necessarily going to be easy, right? Which I don't think any of these next 3 games are going to be gimmies. In fact, I'm rather worried that this, one of the games would be one of those you just fall flat on your face and you lose bad, right? I'm hoping that's not the case, but I'm worried that it could be. You just got to play a solid game. You just have to play your game. And if you do, I think you're going to be in great shape. I wouldn't have much to worry about, because now we don't have to worry about goaltending, as Fernando pointed out in his comment. It's just making sure you mind your P's and Q's and you cross your T's and dot your I's. So that being said, just a couple of quick little last minute notes, and then I will let you guys go for the night. Power play has been looking better. Still some things that I would like to see as far as changes to. I think what I do appreciate is that even if they don't get any shots out, they are still able to set up in the offensive zone. That's one thing I've noticed, despite and I've been disgruntled about this before. Sometimes I get a little frustrated with the drop back single man going into the zone system that Jared Bednar has put together. It's worked, sure, but it just seems like there's a lot of negative drawback to that should something go wrong, because if the guy going into the zone gets poked and that puck goes backward, it's a breakaway the other way. There is no contested breakaway, there is no partial breakaway. It's a breakaway because everyone else has already gotten up to the blue line. So that's what scares me, and it's bit us in the butt a couple of times this year. However, it's working so far, so that I do appreciate. And I do like that they're getting into the zone and setting up around the perimeter. They've got the perimeter set. They've got the defense now contained in that semicircle with maybe the man down in front. What I'd like to see a lot more, actually, is taking those shots. Now, obviously, depending on the team that they play, they could collapse the inside. They could go and play the chase and aggressive game. It all kind of depends. But it shouldn't be that hard to read what kind of team they are when they're on their first penalty kill. I want to see any opportunity get taken toward the front, because we do have a lot of those grubby cleanup goal scorers. Talking about Ross Colton, talking about Arturi Lehkonen, talking about Val Nichushkin, that they put themselves in really good positions to either tip it in or get quick rebounds and throw it back in. Stuff like that, where they are set up and they know how to set themselves up in good positions. But the problem is the Avs like to be far on the outside and pass and pass. And again, for those of you who are regular listeners to this show, you know how frustrated I get when they set up in the offensive zone and just pass around the perimeter every single time, looking for the golden egg of opportunities. And they waste so much time doing that. I still stand by my theory of any opportunity you have, you take, because you don't know if a moving screen could potentially blind the goaltender, if there's a juicy rebound that could get put in, a tip shot. You don't know if you don't take the shot. Like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you don't have to wait for a golden chance. You just need to wait for a chance. And then once you do, please fire away. Additionally, I would like to see the Avalanche get set up a little bit better when it comes to potentially quick slot passes when it's down in front. Two defenders come closing in, leaving a third kind of open, a second Avalanche man, I should say, open closer to the slot to take a closer shot. I'd like to see those passes get a lot more clean because sometimes they're getting a little too cute with it. And it ends up bouncing off a stick or just sailing one way or another. But so I'd like to see that get cleaned up because again, those are really good opportunities when those passes are able to land. So that's one thing that I would like to see. Power play is doing better. Obviously, stuff is working. There's still more that could be done. Adversely, on the penalty kill, very good actually. I've been pretty impressed so far. Obviously, not perfect. No one is. But so far, I've really enjoyed where things sit with the penalty kill. I've really enjoyed Parker Kelly and his defensive ability. Logan O'Connor, same thing with all these shorthanded opportunities that he gives himself. It's impressive. So I quite like where we're at with the penalty kill. And lastly, updates as far as injury goes. Jared Bednar did indicate that he likes the progress of Gabe Landeskog. I wish I knew what that meant. I wish we had a timeline. But he sounded optimistic, so hopefully that means that there's room for him to be here by the end of the season. Let's hope so, because I miss the guy. The captaincy is something a lot of people don't quite understand the importance of in the game of hockey. Captains are the guys that'll stand up for you, or they should stand up for you. They're the ones that have control of the locker room. They are revered. They are respected and loved. They display quality leadership. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the best player out there, right? But they display leadership. And it's hard, especially now almost three full years without a captain and him being on the sidelines hoping to get back out there. It's tough. It's tough when it has something like that. But this team has been able to rally together and put together a pretty good season so far. So the fact that Jared Bednar is optimistic makes me optimistic too. Val Nichushkin, I think they said, is going to miss the next couple of games after this, but then he should be back. And I haven't personally gone and looked yet for Miles Wood, so I can't give you any news on that front yet. But overall, I think where we're sitting is pretty good. I'm gonna call a shot for next week. I'm hoping it's right. By the time next week rolls around, I am hoping that either Keaton Middleton or Fellhaber have a goal. That's going to be my bold prediction of this next week. They've been playing pretty all right. Obviously not perfect. Sometimes they've had pretty dumb mistakes, but both of them have put in a really good effort, and I think they should be rewarded for that. I think it's about time. Kind of like how Parker Kelly finally got a goal. I want Keaton Middleton or Fellhaber to get a goal as well. So that being said, I think that's going to run us right into the ground. Thank you, everyone, for following along on this episode of the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe to the MHRT Network so you can get notified when shows like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. If you want to follow us, please do so. We want you to do so. You can follow us at the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook and at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. With that being said, we got some games to play. They're going to be spread out a little bit this week, so I don't think you'll need to get rusty. You'll be rested. Hopefully we go 3 for 3, 6 points. We'll see how that goes. But again, winnable games. One of them's division. Big 4 points, especially since it's the next game. So if they put together just a solid game like they did tonight for these next 3 games, they'll be in good shape. So with that being said, thank you everyone for joining, for putting up with me for about 45 minutes or so. Appreciate you guys' viewership and your guys' participation in this episode. Hopefully Brit is back next week. So we'll be able to giggle and cry about all the good stuff or bad stuff that has happened over the week. So have a good weekend, everyone. Cheer your heart out for the Avalanche. And as always, go Avs, go.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so